When the crash happened. Joining us this morning, aviation attorney and pilot Dan Rose. Nice to have you here. Not normal. That's not good.
No, a lot of things were not good that happened that night. That was one of them.
How does not normal happen?
Unfortunately, it happens more times than you'd like or you'd see. It's not unusual for air traffic control towers to be understaffed, and controllers are doing the best they can and trying to do multiple tasks, working the ground control, the local control, the tower. So, that's one of the issues in this case for sure.
They said it was not normal but adequate according to FAA standards. And as you said, this is not unusual, but this has been a problem staffing air traffic controllers for years, for decades maybe.
Yeah, decades. I mean, it goes back to really the Reagan years when the union really got fired, and they had to bring in a whole new cadre. They've obviously caught up with that in terms of personnel over the decades. There's some really good technology that's out there now too that's helping. But this is the the soft part of the air traffic control system, and really our aviation system is where the human interaction is really key.
All right. Obviously, it would be speculative at this point because you're not with the NTSB, you're not with the FAA, but you're a pilot as well as an aviation attorney. So based off of the information we've heard so far, what do you speculate may have been the cause?
Well, I think there's things that we do know. This accident is really a classic example of a chain of events occurring. Each one maybe by itself would not have caused this crash. Like nighttime is a factor, the air traffic control is a factor. It appears that the pilots in the military helicopter did not see the right aircraft, obviously.
Because there was a lot going on there.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's night. Lights are hard to pick up on particular aircraft. That's all you see. And if you're looking out and you think you see the right aircraft, you say, yeah, I see it. You tell that to the air traffic controller. Air traffic controller thinks you see it, but if you don't have the right aircraft, something like this can happen, unfortunately.
So you're a pilot. Have you ever flown into the Dulles Reagan Airport?
Not myself, no, just like everybody else.
Okay,
on commercial.
We've always heard over the years LaGuardia had a very strange runway. Does the Reagan Airport have a strange runway too, or is it just because it's so busy there?
Yeah, it's busy. There's short runways. It's a compact airspace. One of the things about it is it's in the middle of the flight restriction zone, so very few aircraft can get in there, really just commercial and military aircraft. So that should really bode in favor of safety because they're well-trained pilots and crews. But, this kind of an arrangement where you have helicopters going underneath a landing aircraft, even by design with 200 or 300 feet of clearance, is just unacceptable.
So the military, they do those kind of operations all the time, right? It's a training for their pilots. Do we know if the person who was behind, in charge of the pilot, were they up to speed? Whether they would just learning this operation?
Those are great questions. They're going to look at that. I think, in one sense, you have to train there if that's the mission, that you're going to have to fly VIPs back and forth. But on the other hand, it depends what kind of training you're doing. You can do that in a much safer place. The NTSB is going to look at the experience level of the pilots, but clearly, mistakes were made there. So it doesn't really matter whether you have 10,000 hours or 1,000 hours. You got to do what you got to do at the time that you're flying.
Obviously, there are unique circumstances there in D.C. because of all the military flights, the government flights with helicopters, in addition to commercials. But do we have to worry about anything? Obviously, again, 2009 was the last major incident we've had with a commercial flight, so it's definitely not frequent. But with the New York airports, there have been lots of close calls over the years. As recently as last year, the year before, we keep hearing about JFK, LaGuardia. Is that something that flyers out in New York have to worry about? Not necessarily a military helicopter, but all these close calls and the air traffic control.
Yeah, we clearly have, based on the track record, as you pointed out, a very overall safe aviation system, the safest in the world probably. But it has soft spots. It has danger points, and the number one item on the list is the potential for collisions, whether it's on the ground where a aircraft taxis onto the runway when another plane ground, where a aircraft taxis onto the runway when another plane is landing or taking off, which we've seen around here a lot. Or just like this is really the same thing, where a plane is landing and another helicopter here is crossing underneath it. Too close, shouldn't be there. So that is the weak spot. You shouldn't worry about it. I mean, I get on planes all the time, and it's still the safest mode of transportation statistically. You got to keep that in mind. But there's always room for improvement. We can't just get complacent, and unfortunately, there will be lessons learned out of this.
Do you see lessons being learned and changes being made going forward, or will this be one that they recognize what happened but do nothing?
No, I'm sure there'll be changes. I don't think the public will stand for the fact that nobody does anything about this. Clearly, 67 people died. You can't just say, carry on.
Right. Dan Rose, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with us this morning. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks for the insight.
All right,
We'll be back with